saved Song Sui. Once. When Jiang Yan bullied him until he could barely stay alive. I was the one who pulled him out of that equipment room. Because of me, Jiang Yan was punished. Years later, Song Sui became a top music star, adored by countless fans. On the night of his grand concert, he looked at me with deep affection and proposed in front of thousands of people. I thought that would be the happiest moment of my life. But that same night, one of his crazed fans rushed toward me with a blade. Song Sui stood right beside me. A cigarette rested between his lips, and his eyes were cold as he watched my strength fade, little by little, gasping for breath. I begged him to save me. He slowly bent down. A trace of burning ash fell near my eyelid, and his faint smile sent a chill through my entire body. Who asked you to meddle back then and save me? He whispered. She was so fragile. When Jiang Yan was hurt, she must have suffered terribly. Only in that moment did I finally understand the truth. The person Song Sui had loved all those years was never me. It was Jiang Yan, the woman who had once nearly destroyed him. Darkness swallowed me. Then, in the blink of an eye, I opened my eyes again. The burning pain, near my eyelid, still seemed to pulse through every nerve. The nightmare of my life slipping away from the wound at my throat made me jolt in terror. When the scene before me became clear, I realized I had returned to the very first day I transferred schools. And in front of me, Song Sui was on the ground again, battered, humiliated, and begging me to save him one more time. Song Sui, do you see how pathetic you are? The young man, with a delicate, fair face, was sprawled on the ground, panting in humiliation. All 10 of his fingers were swollen and badly injured. His thin back was being ground beneath the pointed heel of Jiang Yan's high-heeled shoe. That moment, he looked no different from an ant being trampled underfoot. Through the glass window, Song Sui struggled to twist his neck. His dark eyes stared straight at me. His voice was hoarse and dry, like a cracked lake bade. Save me. This scene was exactly the same as in my previous life. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Looking at the play in his eyes, clear as day, I only felt it was both ridiculous and hateful. Song Sui. Oh, Song Sui. You spent all that time blaming me for meddling. But the one who screamed until his voice broke, begging me to save his life back then, was you, wasn't it? On what grounds was I the one who paid the heaviest price in the end? I still remembered the first day I transferred to this new school. Outside the equipment room, I heard someone faintly calling for help. That time, Song Sui was drenched in sweat, as if he had just been pulled out of water. His whole body trembled from the beating. I pulled him out of the mud. Afterward, whenever Jiang Yan came looking for trouble again and again, I stood in front of him and shielded him. Because of that, I suffered quite a lot at her hands too. A few nosy classmates asked if I had fallen for Song Sui. To be honest, I felt nothing for him at the time. It was only because my closest childhood friend had once dropped out of school abroad after falling into depression from bullying. That was why I especially despised bullies who used their strength to torment the weak on campus. But Song Sui lowered his head and gently held my wrist. His voice was soft, almost tender. I like you. Only much later did I understand. That moment, Jiang Yan had been standing outside the window. He had said those words only to make her jealous. Song Sui took the initiative to offer to tutor me. Later, we were both admitted to the same university. On the very day our admission letters arrived, Jiang Yan was also sentenced to 10 years in prison for intentionally taking another person's life. That night, Song Sui got dead drunk. Like a beast that had lost its mind, he pinned me hard against the wall and kissed me madly by force. The next morning, when he saw the chaotic marks on my neck, A dark, unreadable glint flashed through his eyes. See, he hugged me tightly and apologized word by word. I'm sorry. It's only because I love you too much. My parents strongly opposed our relationship. They could tell Song Sui was deep and calculating, not at all the gentle, kind person he appeared to be. Everything changed during a mountain climbing trip. That time, I slipped and fell off a cliff. Song Sui rushed out to save me and nearly lost both legs. See, only then did my parents believe he truly loved me. With the financial support of my family as his springboard, Song Sui quickly gained a firm footing in the entertainment industry. Right after graduation, together with the music album I personally poured my heart and effort into creating for him, his name exploded across social media overnight. When Song Sui was preparing to hold a concert for tens of thousands of people, he promised he would give me a surprise on stage. I had also secretly made plans. I intended to use that occasion to tell him I was pregnant. Only, when my body turned cold and my vision blurred, as my life ebbed away, did I finally understand the truth. Song Sui's original plan had been to use that concert to publicly confess the love he had silently guarded for Jiang Yan for 10 years. Unfortunately, because Jiang Yan's beauty had been destroyed, she had been hiding in the hospital all along. Song Sui poured all his resentment and fury onto me. Tears flooded my eyes. The agony tearing through my heart left me without even the strength to gasp. Seeing my small life quietly slipping away, he froze for only a moment. Very quickly, his eyes returned to their icy calm. His hand gripped my chin hard. Do you know? All these years, every time I saw that hypocritical face of yours, I was so disgusted I wanted to vomit. If you hadn't stood in the way, Yan and I would never have been separated. You should have paid with your life long ago. When my soul was forced out of my body, the pain was so extreme it felt as though it would split me in two. My mind gradually cleared. See. Only then did I realize in shock that I had truly come back to life. Sunlight outside the window was dazzlingly bright. The young man's pleading eyes were still fixed on my face. I hugged my stack of textbooks tightly and walked past the window without looking back. The hem of my white skirt fluttered lightly, graceful as a flower just beginning to bloom. Song Sui. In this life, I will never again meddle in the nauseating love game between the two of you. I will simply stand back and watch just how happy you two can become. As soon as I stepped into my new classroom, the bell for class rang. Song Sui walked in slowly from the back door, hunched and silent. He wore an oversized school uniform jacket. Both hands were hidden inside the sleeves. Aside from the cold sweat beading on his forehead, he did not look injured from the outside. It seemed that, in order to cover up Jiang Yan's crime, he had spent quite a bit of effort. Lin Yitang, since you've just transferred here, you can sit with Song Sui for now. He has excellent grades and can help you with your studies. Song Sui's eyes immediately landed on my face. A flicker of tension passed through them. Those pitch-black pupils watched me warily. What was wrong? He afraid I would open my mouth and tell everyone about the ridiculous incident outside the equipment room earlier. No need, teacher. I've already chosen a seat for myself. Smiled faintly. Then walked straight to the empty desk, in the far corner of the last row. My dislike was as obvious as daylight. Song Sui's face instantly darkened until it looked extremely ugly. But why should I care how he felt? I calmly took out my books and began reviewing the high school knowledge I had thrown aside for nearly 10 years. When school ended, I stayed behind because I was slow packing my things. Suddenly, a tall black shadow blocked my view. I looked up and met Song Sui's cold face. Noon today. You were clearly standing outside the window. You saw me. He pressed his lips together. His eyes drilled into me with probing suspicion. Why didn't you save me? For one instant, my subconscious jolted. I almost thought Song Sui had been reborn too. But when I looked carefully at the crease between his furrowed brows and the faint confusion in his eyes, I knew this was definitely not the expression of someone with memories from the previous life. I leisurely slung my backpack over my shoulder and slowly walked past him. Sorry. My ears have some problems, so I usually can't hear dogs barking. The next morning, during early self-study, I had just arrived at class when the homeroom teacher anxiously called me to the office. Lin Yitang. There is something I need to ask you about. The moment I looked over and saw Song Sui standing beside the desk with his eyes lowered. His mother beside him. I could already guess what play they were putting on. The homeroom teacher had only just cleared her throat. Before she could even open her mouth, Song Sui's mother rushed toward me with a gray, furious face. She raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. You damned girl. She gathered her strength and tried to strike me again. But two other teachers rushed over and stopped her. The homeroom teacher shouted, Mrs. Song, what are you doing? The injuries on Song Sui's body were not caused by this student. Song Sui's mother was a small vendor at the vegetable market. She was physically strong and sturdy. Half of my face burned with pain. One ear went numb and rang loudly. I lifted a hand to cover my face, then raised my cold gaze to look at her. Her expression was filled with deep resentment. She pointed straight at my face and cursed. If it weren't for you, would my son be this badly injured? You clearly passed by there. So why didn't you go in and save him? You damned little girl, how can your heart be so vicious? The homeroom teacher looked at me awkwardly. The attacker had a hat and mask on, so the surveillance footage can't identify them. Lin Yitang, according to Song Sui, he called for help yesterday, but you turned away and ignored him. Is that true? I glanced at Song Sui beside her. His hands hung at his sides. His head was lowered. His slightly long bangs covered his eyes, so outsiders could not see his expression clearly. It seemed he was heartbroken for the girl of his dreams, and could not bear to expose Jiang Yan. So, he had no choice but to drag me in as a substitute punching bag. Teacher. I truly didn't hear anyone calling for help. I lowered the hand covering my face, revealing 5 bright, red finger marks. My eyes filled with tears as I perfectly played the role of a weak little flower being bullied. Yesterday, when I passed by, I was wearing earphones and listening to music, so I didn't hear anything at all. I turned sharply to look at Song Sui. This classmate. If you were beaten that badly, why didn't you report it to a teacher immediately yesterday? The question was sharp. It struck exactly where it hurt, and the entire office fell into silence. Song Sui's mother's expression changed at once. She began thumping her chest and crying loudly. I don't care. My son was beaten inside your school. The school must take responsibility, the homeroom teacher hurriedly explained. But the attacker in the surveillance footage is not a student from our school. That doesn't matter either. I calmly took my phone out of my pocket. Let's just report it to the authorities. For a violent incident like this, letting the police handle it would be the clearest solution. Do not call the police. Song Sui, who had been silent all this time, suddenly shouted. I was careless and hurt myself. It has nothing to do with anyone else. He gritted his teeth. You brat. Mom. Shut up. Song Sui turned and shouted directly at his mother. Then he turned back and bowed solemnly to the homeroom teacher. Please. Let this matter end here. After that, he stared straight into my eyes. Lin Yitang, thank you for your kindness. But there is no need to trouble yourself by calling the police. CSK. Who said I was calling the police to help clear your name? I pressed the call button and calmly reported into the phone. Officer. There is an aggressive person attacking a student on school grounds. You vicious little brat. Song Sui's mother was so angry her neck turned red. She rushed forward to snatch my phone. But I lightly dodged to the side. The male teacher, who had been sitting nearby drinking tea, tried to persuade me. Calling the police seems a little excessive, doesn't it? If there is a problem, we can sit down and solve it peacefully. I gave a cold smile. Teacher, I think calling the police is the best option. Because if my parents find out their daughter was slapped until her face swelled like this, the consequences definitely won't stop at peaceful resolution. You're still a brat who hasn't even grown up. Who are you trying to threaten? Song Sui's mother shrieked. Even after the homeroom teacher loudly warned her, she still refused to stop. There's a song. You had better apologize to this student. The homeroom teacher sighed, as if her patience had finally reached its limit. The entire plot of land, where the vegetable market stall you rent is located, belongs to Lin Yitang's family. After hearing that, the woman was like a duck, being choked by the throat. Her face shifted from ashen gray to deathly white. She could not squeeze out even half a word. Song Sui stood beside her. His eyes shifted slightly toward me, his brows drawn together, his gaze complicated. In the end, Song Sui's mother was detained for 5 days. When she was taken into the police vehicle, she curled up in fear, like a frightened quail. Thinking back to my previous life, that time I secretly called the police outside the equipment room. The officers arrived in time and saved Song Sui's life. Back then, his mother had disappeared without a trace and never once showed her face. But later, when she happened to learn that the poultry market belonged to my family, she immediately blocked my way at the school gate. She clung to my arm, sweetly calling me her precious daughter with a shamelessly friendly smile. Only much later did I understand. In truth, she had known all along who the vicious girl who hurt her son was. She simply had no face to stand up and expose the truth. After the ridiculous farce ended, I returned to class and continued studying. During the long break, all the students went to the schoolyard to run. Song Sui quietly carried a plastic bag over to my desk. He laid each item from inside the bag on my desk. There was medicated oil, cotton swabs, a piece of bread, and a carton of milk. About this morning, I apologize to you on behalf of my mother. I noticed you didn't eat anything this morning. I looked at him coldly. Are you done talking? He pressed his lips together lightly. Confusion and bewilderment appeared in his dark eyes. You really hate me, don't you? Why? I simply looked straight into his eyes and was too lazy to answer. He also fell silent. A moment later, wearing a fake wounded expression, he turned and left gloomily. Crash. I swept all that trash from my desk straight into the garbage bin. Song Sui's footsteps suddenly paused. But he did not turn around. After evening self-study ended, I refused to let my private driver pick me up. I walked slowly alone down a narrow street, enjoying the cool night breeze. Suddenly, a familiar, sticky voice struck my eardrums. Song Sui, looks like you're pretty obedient after all. Well done keeping that mouth of yours sealed and not selling me out. Tell me, how do you want this sister to reward you? Jiang Yan's flirtatious voice rang through the silent night, sounding especially wanton. Song Sui was pressed against a street lamp by her. He stubbornly reached up and snatched the cigarette from between her lips. Stop smoking. Slap. Jiang Yan swung her hand and slapped him so hard his jaw turned to the side. You think too highly of your position. Since when is it your place to lecture me? A moment later, Jiang Yan suddenly laughed in smug satisfaction. She tilted her neck up and let her lips brush past the young man's Adam's apple. You once promised you would handle that market property for me. Once it's done, I'll reward you with one night. How does that sound? Song Sui's hands clutched the straps of his school bag tightly. He said nothing. A wave of nausea surged up to my throat. I crouched down by the wall and retched again and again. When I staggered back to my feet, I heard Jiang Yan cry out in shock. Song Sui was gripping her chin hard, his eyes dark. He leaned forward and forced a kiss onto her. First, Jiang Yan struggled violently and slapped him several more times in passing. But under Song Sui's frenzied attack, her resistance gradually changed in nature. The two lunatics tangled together, kissing greedily beneath the hazy moonlight. The image was so ambiguous it felt sticky to the eyes. Yan Yan. He looked at that vicious woman with infatuation. Whatever you want, I will offer it to you with both hands. That moment, Song Sui's eyes were flooded with desire and deranged obsession. His shoulders trembled violently. I leaned against the mottled brick wall, my 10 fingers scraping hard against the dry surface. It took me a long while to suppress the nausea twisting in my stomach. Memories from the previous life surged back again. That time, Song Sui came looking for me with his body covered in wounds. The usually silent young man cast aside his pride and begged me in a hoarse voice. Lin Yitang, can you help me one more time? He desperately wanted a storefront for a business. That time, he wore an old, worn school uniform every day. His family circumstances were poor and difficult. Naively, I thought he pitied his mother and wanted to find her a place with a roof, to shield her from sun and rain, so she would no longer have to peddle her goods on the street. My heart softened, and I nodded. I was even afraid of hurting his pride. So I went through the trouble of asking someone else to handle the paperwork for him. This farce had stretched across 2 lifetimes, and only tonight was the curtain finally lifted. So, the person he felt sorry for deep in his heart was not the mother weathering sun and rain in a corner of the market. It was his little lover, Jiang Yan. In my previous life, Song Sui blamed me for standing in the way of their love, which was why he heartlessly pushed me to my death. But the truth was that before I had even developed the slightest feelings for him, he had already calmly used me again and again, without the faintest prick of conscience. From the very beginning, he had been a wolf living by sucking others dry. Looking at those 2 figures entangled together again, I slowly clenched my fists. The college entrance exam was approaching. I poured all my energy into my books. I had been away from school for too long, and my knowledge in some subjects had completely slipped away. I had no choice but to sprint and fill in those gaps. As for Song Sui, every day, as soon as the dismissal bell rang, he flew out of the classroom. His destination was always the gate of the vocational school across the street, where he stood and flirted intimately with a troublesome girl. After that, he even skipped evening self-study entirely. During the day, he sat in class yawning constantly, dazed and listless, as if he had not slept. Song Sui was called out and criticized by the teachers more than a few times. Every time, he would stand up with a calm face, showing not the slightest shame. His messy collar hung low, revealing suggestive scratches around his collarbone. Several dark bite marks were also imprinted. Under the sunlight, those swollen red marks looked even more offensive to the eye. Yet, he only narrowed his eyes slightly, his gaze glowing with intoxicated nostalgia, as if he were admiring a proud badge of victory. The college entrance exam is right in front of you. Look at yourself. Do you still have even the slightest bearing of a student? The homeroom teacher was half angry and half unable to believe her eyes. Song Sui tilted his head slightly. His gaze crossed the space and met mine. Only a second later, he looked away indifferently, calmly treating me like a stranger. I kept my face cold and lowered my head to finish the equations I had not yet solved. The major mock exam was about to begin. So that day I stayed at school later than usual. Just as I stepped out of the main gate, a figure suddenly blocked my path. Say, you're Lin Yitang, right? Jiang Yan had braided her hair into an absurd purple plait. She chewed gum noisily, and the pointed heel of her shoe tapped against the asphalt. She lifted her chin and smiled provocatively. You look pretty tacky too. She cleared her throat and mocked me. I'll give you one chance. According to the course of events in this life, Jiang Yan should not have known me at all. Before I could speak, she spat the gum onto the ground and said in a disdainful tone, So you're the one having an affair with that lowlife Song Sui? Stop pretending. I saw your photo in his phone. Then, she laughed mockingly. Her ambitious eyes swept me from head to toe, showing a faint flicker of jealous resentment. People in the underworld say your family is filthy rich. Let's do this. Cough up a sum of money, and I'll wrap Song Sui up and hand him over to you for your entertainment. How about that? Seeing that I stayed silent, she began to grow anxious. Right at that moment, a rush of hurried footsteps approached. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Yan was gathered into Song Sui's arms and shielded. He glared at me defensively, then immediately lowered his head and asked anxiously, Yan Yan, are you all right? Jiang Yan rolled her eyes irritably and kicked Song Sui hard in the leg. Then, she jumped onto the heavy motorcycle, parked by the roadside, twisted the throttle, and sped away. I could not be bothered to waste another second on this cheap romance drama. I lifted my foot to leave, but suddenly Song Sui called after me. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions. That was when the final piece fell into place. Song Sui was not simply repeating his old mistakes by accident. You already knew I had come back too, didn't you? I stopped. That was right. Ever since that night, when I saw him force a kiss on Jiang Yan with my own eyes, I had been certain of one thing. He had also lived another life, just like me. Song Sui of the previous life, when standing before Jiang Yan, was as humble as a dog that had thrown away all dignity. Where would he have found the courage to force her? I kept my gaze as flat and still as water. Song Sui's face gradually darkened. Lin Yitang, you had better remember this clearly. In this life, I absolutely will not let Yan Yan suffer even a single scratch again. So that was it. He was wearing that tense expression because he was afraid I would find a way to settle accounts with Jiang Yan. Sir, perhaps my mocking smile was too unpleasant to look at. Song Sui seemed to remember something, and the corners of his mouth tightened. In the previous life, you died by my hand. Consider that enough of a lesson for your stupidity. Since we have both been reborn, let the river water not offend the well water. We each go our own way and mind our own business. His tone was arrogant and overbearing to a ridiculous degree, as if he were a superior person, granting me mercy. As if I were the one who had stolen his perfect life. I tilted my head back and laughed loudly. I laughed until tears flowed from the corners of my eyes. His bitter, resentful appearance made him look as if I were his irreconcilable enemy. And yet I remembered the day I slipped and fell off the cliff in my previous life. In order to protect me, his legs were crushed. Even in that miserable condition, he dragged himself forward, struggling to crawl to my side, so he could hold me. If I shed even a single tear, he would panic and clumsily stroke my hair to comfort me. Perhaps his nature had never changed. What lesson did I receive? A lesson about taking in a cold-blooded beast that bites the hand that feeds it. I coldly wiped away the tears on my lashes. You love Jiang Yan so deeply. Yet just now she was anxiously naming a price, eager to sell you to me for money. Unfortunately, I Lin Yitang do not have the habit of collecting toxic waste. When the shell of deep affection from the previous life was torn open, I realized Song Sui was nothing more than a cheap, pitiful clown. Looking at the way he was so angry, smoke might have burst from his head. Yet he could do nothing to me. I felt incomparably satisfied. But how could this little bit be enough to repay the blood debt from my previous life? On campus, rumors were never in short supply. No one knew what trick Song Sui used, but he really did manage to rent a storefront for Jiang Yan. More importantly, it was a stall in a prime location on a bustling commercial street. The rent was frighteningly expensive. Jiang Yan waved her hand and ordered her mother to move their fruit stand into the beautifully renovated kiosk. Not far away, Song Su's mother was still bent over, laying out baskets of wilted vegetables on the roadside. Whenever she saw urban management officers passing by, she hurriedly packed up and ran around in panic. The results of the second mock exam were announced. In exchange for countless late nights burning the midnight oil, I jumped to the top 5 in the class. Across the entire grade, I ranked 32nd. My math and English scores were almost perfect. It was just that time was too tight, and I had not yet managed to cram all the memorization-based subjects into my head. I lowered my head and carefully circled the knowledge points I needed to strengthen in red. My ears caught a few whispers about Song Sui. Song Sui, who had been the second-ranked student for 3 consecutive years, had plummeted to somewhere in the 200s on this exam. That result truly stunned the entire school. Song Sui, what on earth have you been doing lately? Even the homeroom teacher could not hide her disappointment as she frowned and questioned him. Song Sui took his exam papers back to his seat without even glancing at them. He crumpled them into a ball and shoved them into his backpack. His attitude was strangely calm. It was only one mistake. When the college entrance exam comes, first place will definitely still be mine. He spoke. He glanced toward me with an expression as if victory were already in his grasp. It seemed he was sending me some kind of provocative message. On his desk, there were no longer stacks of math, physics, and chemistry review materials. Instead, scattered lyric drafts lay everywhere. After school, that afternoon, I went with a few friends to the gate to buy stuffed flatbread as a snack. While we were lining up and waiting for our food, the girl beside me suddenly pointed across the street. Look. Isn't that our class genius Song Sui? I looked toward the gate of the vocational school. Song Sui was leaning lazily against the wall. Jiang Yan waddled out from the school and threw herself straight into his arms. She climbed onto him like a kangaroo, tilting her face upward and pouting flirtatiously. Song Sui smiled indulgently. He flicked the cigarette he had not finished smoking to the ground, lifted her chin, and lowered his head to kiss her greedily. The fiery red evening glow dyed a corner of the sky. Those two embraced and kissed passionately right in front of the school gate, treating every passerby like air. Their infatuated appearance made them look like the male and female leads of a television drama who had gone through life and death to earn their happiness. Oh my gosh. That's so romantic. 2 middle school girls, passing by, covered their faces and screamed excitedly. Even when the parent beside them tugged at their hands, they still refused to leave. At first, the friend who had come with me was also enthusiastically watching the scene. But when Song Sui turned and revealed the face of the female lead, her tone immediately changed to suspicion. Isn't that Jiang Yan from the nursing department at the vocational school? In the watching crowd, whispers rose. Doesn't that girl already have a boyfriend? Male student from the vocational school who was standing in line for flatbread pointed at Song Sui and asked us with wide eyes. That guy goes to your school. Damn, he's got guts. He dares to steal our boss's woman. Is he tired of living? The boy took a huge bite of flatbread and shook his head while chewing. But I have to admit, anyone who dares mess with someone like Jiang Yan is pretty tough. Listening to the crowd gossiping all at once, memories from my previous life suddenly flooded my mind. Jiang Yan did indeed have a boyfriend from the same school named Queen Hao. He was considered a powerful local thug, someone who could call the wind and summon the rain across several nearby streets. Queen Hao was a womanizer. Besides Jiang Yan, he went around flirting with countless decent girls. No matter how madly jealous Jiang Yan became, she did not dare make a sound in front of Qin Hao. So, she frantically vented her revenge on those innocent girls instead. The worst incident happened when Qin Hao began eyeing Jiang Yan's roommate. The girl was gentle and kind, and she topped her major every year. So, although she rejected him again and clearly stated that she had no feelings for that thug, Jiang Yan's vicious nature would not let her go. On the exact day of the college entrance exam, Jiang Yan heartlessly drugged her roommate. On the day of the college entrance exam, Jiang Yan drugged her roommate and carried out a vicious attack that left the girl permanently scarred. She even cruelly taped the victim's mouth shut. When the girl woke up, Jiang Yan forced her to face the damage and mocked her despair. Using the nursing skills she had learned at school, Jiang Yan cruelly tormented the victim even further. She even took photos of the aftermath and sent them to Qin Hao as if it were proof of her victory. Even when she was handcuffed, that cold-blooded woman still had not a trace of remorse on her face. She even spoke mockingly to the victim's poor father. Blame yourself for giving birth to that little vixen who dared steal my man. What a pity you all arrived too early actually. I'm pretty good at anatomy too. Taking advantage of the loophole of being underage, Jiang Yan received only a 10-year prison sentence. During those 10 years, that innocent girl was still trapped with hospital beds and psychological wounds that could never be undone. Yet on the day Jiang Yan was released from prison, the first thing she did was take a knife and go looking for Qin Hao, intending to give him a memorable cut. Lost in memory, I shivered involuntarily even though I was standing in the middle of a noisy crowd. Chill ran down my spine. When I looked again at the couple kissing passionately in the distance, I only wanted to sneer. Sure enough, there were some people in this world who were born carrying sin. Anyone who accidentally became entangled with them would end up in an unimaginably miserable state. Wasn't my soulless corpse in the previous life the perfect example? Seen from that angle, Song Sui and Jiang Yan truly were a matching pair. 7. Had made them a couple that could not be separated. Time spun forward rapidly. By the third mock exam, my ranking rose another 8 places. The homeroom teacher was openly delighted and specially called me to the office to praise me. As soon as she finished, she rubbed her forehead and let out a deeply worried sigh. Song Sui dropped another 100 places this time. I really don't understand what has happened to him lately. Another teacher, sipping tea beside her, laughed and replied, "He's busy dating. Don't you know?" On several evening walks, I saw your beloved student standing guard at the vocational school gate, waiting for his girlfriend. After all, Song Sui had once been the shining star and pride of the homeroom teacher. After thinking it over, she decided to ask several subject teachers to open a secret tutoring class to pull his grades back up. Throughout the process, I stood quietly in a corner and nodded, perfectly playing the role of an obedient, sensible student. But I knew very well that soon the teacher would understand one truth. For people who throw themselves into the mud, all salvation is useless. Just as expected, Song Sui wore that lofty face of his and flatly rejected the teacher's kindness. He even began playing the game of arriving late and leaving early. Some days, he skipped class for half a day, and the homeroom teacher had no idea where her student had evaporated to. But I knew, Evening. My parents, wearing unusually mysterious expressions, held my hands and brought me to the entrance of a newly opened bar. Tang Tang. Do you remember how you tipped us off about university, planning to open a new campus in this area? My mother said excitedly. Your father and I invested heavily and bought up the whole row of buildings around here. We're planning to open restaurants, hotels, and several bars. Look at this business plan and see if anything is missing. Of course, I kept the absurd matter of my rebirth hidden, but strangely, my parents believed every word I said with absolute trust, even though the plan for a new campus sounded ridiculous and smelled like a scam to everyone nearby. My parents never voiced a single doubt. They wholeheartedly supported every decision made by their precious daughter. Thinking back to my previous life, the only time my parents opposed me fiercely was when I insisted on dating that bastard Song Sui. The moment the bar door was pushed open, the corners of my eyes became damp. The first thing I saw was Song Sui holding a microphone, singing along with the music on the stage. His singing voice was smooth and deadly. He was performing all the hit songs that singers in the industry would only release years later. Even more disgusting was the sign standing proudly beside him, carefully written with the words, Original Song, Singer-Songwriter, Song Sui. I remembered very clearly the sorrowful folk ballad he was singing. It was the heartfelt work of a music teacher for his wife, who was hovering between life and death. His wife lay gasping in an intensive care ward. During the day, the teacher taught children. At night, he worked painstakingly on music to earn money for her hospital fees. Through the cold glass, day after day, he held his phone and sang to his wife, trying to drag back each of her breaths. Only much later, when the song went viral across the internet and brought in enormous royalties, did that teacher finally gather enough money to pay for her lung transplant. His wife finally crossed the line of death and held his hand again. When the song ended, thunderous applause burst from below. At the same time, Song Sui lifted his eyes and saw me. In just a few short seconds of eye contact, he calmly moved his gaze away. Not a trace of guilt clung to the corners of his eyes. It seemed that to him, brazenly stealing someone else's blood and tears was nothing to be ashamed of. He had clearly been given the grace of rebirth. He was clearly luckier than countless others, holding in his hands a chance to start over. And yet his rotten nature still made him steal other people's lives without hesitation. Mom, Dad, help me handle something. I had once firmly believed Song Sui was only a filthy maggot lying in a dirty, disgusting sewer. But reality proved that if he were left alone to pupate into a fly, that disgust would be magnified 100-fold. I lit the fuse with only a tiny trick. I paid a runner and revealed the truth about the Prime Street kiosk to Song Sui's mother. Her precious son had offered money to support Jiang Yan and her mother. The moment Song Sui's mother heard the news, she erupted like a volcano. In the middle of the bustling street, where people came and went, the two mothers threw themselves at each other like madwomen. One scratched at eyes, the other pulled hair. They screamed and cursed each other with the dirtiest market language. You little vixen. You incited your damned daughter to seduce my son and dig money out of him to rent this storefront, didn't you? This place was paid for with my family's blood, sweat, and tears. You mother and daughter, get out onto the street right now. Spit on you. You're the cheap one. Jiang Yan's mother was not easy to deal with either. Her eyes were bloodshot as she grabbed rotten apples from the stall and hurled them at the other woman's face. Back then, you shamelessly seduced my husband until he died right on your bed. Now I'm only taking one storefront from you. That's already merciful, you old hag. Pelted by the rain of rotten apples, Song Sui's mother held her head and stepped back several paces. Then, she heard the contemptuous whispers of the watching crowd, and her face turned blue, then red. It was certain this was the dirtiest secret she wanted to carry with her to the grave, and never expose before the public. Looking back many years, the Song and Jiang families had once pooled money to do business together. Seeing Song Sui and his mother alone and pitiful, Jiang Yan's father warmly reached out to help. But after helping each other back and forth, proximity fed desire. Those two shameless people rolled into bed together. Absurdly, that awful man suffered a heart attack and died on the spot. The hospital stretcher had to rush all the way to Song Sui's mother's bed to carry the corpse away, so unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion. The Song family had no choice but to grit their teeth and hand over a huge compensation payment to Jiang Yan and her mother. Afterward, they tucked their tails between their legs and left the area. Now that the cover had been torn away, Song Sui's mother howled and rushed forward, trying to rip the other woman's mouth apart. But before she could touch her, Jiang Yan came rushing from nowhere and kicked her hard, sending her sprawling backward onto the ground. Old hag, if you dare touch a single hair on my mother's head, I'll twist your neck. Jiang Yan angrily raised her arm. And at that exact moment, Song Sui jumped out and blocked his mother. Slap. He took the burning slap squarely, his face snapping to one side. You dare protect her. Jiang Yan went berserk and raised her hand, ready to add another strike. This time, Song Sui grabbed her wrist tightly. Jiang Yan, stop making trouble. In the depths of his eyes, a few icy threads appeared. Jiang Yan glared at him so fiercely her stare could burn holes through his face. She yanked her arm free, dragged her mother with her, and stormed away. But Song Sui's mother refused to shut her mouth. You damn son. Did you really take money to rent a place for those bastards? What kind of spell did they put on you, making you hand them money like that? Song Sui irritably rubbed the space between his brows. I can earn money again any time. Mom stopped finding ways to make life hard for them. The crowd gathered around them grew larger and larger. Song Sui's face twisted until it was uglier than ever. Suddenly, through the noisy crowd, his gaze stopped on me, and his expression went cold. Without a word, he strode straight toward me. You orchestrated today's show, didn't you? His tone was certain. I only happened to pass by. Of course, he would have to be insane to believe me. You came here to witness how miserable I look, didn't you? He hissed through clenched teeth. Do you think this will make me regret anything? I held my iced milk tea in both hands and raised my brows slightly, not bothering to answer. The deeply dark glint flashed through his eyes. I will never regret it. As long as I can win Yan Yan's heart back, I would willingly go down to hell. After hearing that, I only smiled faintly. I let out a soft laugh, turned on my heel, and walked away. The college entrance exam was drawing near. The homeroom teacher hoped I could go on the school radio station and read a speech to encourage the students. This was a sacred tradition for the senior class. In fact, that speaking spot had been decided half a year earlier. The person originally chosen was Song Sui. But look at his miserable state now. The homeroom teacher shook her head and sighed. Her eyes were full of expectation as she looked at me. Everyone has seen your progress this semester. All the teachers agree that no one is more suitable than you at this moment. I accepted the task, smiled, and walked out of the office. As it happened, I ran right into Song Sui in the corridor. He had vanished from school for quite some time. This time he had shown up probably only to collect his exam admission card. At this moment all the students were immersed in the tense atmosphere of preparing for the exam. Even when they went to the bathroom, they used the time to memorize a few more vocabulary words. No one had any attention left for Song Sui's magnificent love story. He spread an arm and blocked my way, the corner of his mouth lifting in a mocking smile. You must be very pleased to have stolen my speaking slot. I gave him a sympathetic look. Try guessing whether anyone wants to hear study experience from someone who used to be first in the grade and is now near the bottom. The college entrance exam is almost here. Nobody wants to bring bad luck onto themselves. As soon as I finished, the muscles in Song Sui's face twitched repeatedly. But very quickly, he recovered his confident, victory-in-hand demeanor. He lowered his voice and hissed, "No matter what happens, I will definitely still be the top scorer in this exam." I only shrugged, too lazy to respond. After collecting our exam admission cards, the students left the classroom carrying heavy school bags on their backs. Under the plane tree in the schoolyard, a girl gently waved at me. Her face looked both familiar and somewhat unfamiliar. "Hello. I'm Lin Wenjing." She spoke shyly, her smile a little nervous. Lin Wenjing. The moment that name passed through my mind, I immediately remembered. She was the victim whose life Jiang Yan had destroyed in my previous life. I pulled back my thoughts, and my gaze fell on the vocational school uniform she was wearing. "Why are you here?" I truly did not understand. Right after I was reborn, the first thing I did was ask someone to look into her situation. They reported back that Lin Wenjing had already transferred schools. I transferred back again. I heard from classmates that a girl named Lin Yitang had been asking about me some time ago. She was a little embarrassed. She was not exactly stunningly beautiful, but when she smiled, two tiny dimples appeared at the corners of her mouth. They were incredibly adorable. Following my gaze, she gently raised a hand to touch her cheek. A flash of sorrow that could not be erased passed through her eyes. In an instant, I suddenly understood everything. She was the same as me. She had also been reborn. Then, why did you decide to return to this place? Aren't you afraid? I am. That memory was truly painfully unbearable. But precisely because of that, I don't want any more innocent girls to endure the same terrible things I did. She had a small and slender figure, and her voice was gentle, but her eyes were strangely firm. I remembered her tragic ending in the previous life. For 10 long years, she lay on a hospital bed in despair, enduring physical pain, hiding herself away, and never daring to look in the mirror. Her old, quiet father broke the law because he wanted justice for his daughter. Jiang Yan had destroyed both father and daughter, shattering a once peaceful family. Compared with the price Jiang Yan paid, the cost of doing evil was truly far too cheap. Lin Wenjing smiled at me. Lin Yitang, thank you for caring about me. I wish you a smooth college entrance exam. I smiled back. I took the hand she had wanted to reach out, but had hesitated to withdraw. Everything will go smoothly. The bell signaling the end of the exam rang. I walked out of the exam room feeling refreshed and light. My parents were already waiting. Son carried water over to me, while the other held a fan and fanned me. Dad, how is the company registration I asked you to handle before? My father glanced at me, half joking and half serious. This is such an important exam, yet who knows where my daughter's mind has flown. After saying that, he patted his chest and added, "It's all done. But our family has been in traditional industries for so many years. Now you suddenly want to open some internet media company. What exactly is it for?" I linked arms with my parents as we walked and laughed softly. "Of course it's to make a mountain of money to support both of you in old age." The family was laughing and chatting happily. Just as I was about to get into the car, a powerful force suddenly grabbed my arm. The first thing I saw was Song Sui's face, cold as an iceberg. Did you tamper with something? Several police officers, on duty nearby, immediately looked over. He had no choice but to lower his voice, leaning close to my ear as he hissed in bitter hatred. The college entrance exam questions were completely changed. You did it, didn't you? I looked at him indifferently. If you have the ability, try shouting a little louder. His momentum deflated instantly. I sneered inwardly. From the beginning, I had known why Song Sui was so confident, thumping his chest and insisting he would be the top scorer. He was relying on his memory of the exam questions from the previous life. That was why he had idled around and neglected his studies. While I buried my head in textbooks, memorizing and practicing listening until my eyes were red, he was busy hugging and passionately dating Jiang Yan, but who said the exam questions in this life could not change. Everyone knew the college entrance exam never had only one version of the paper. Lin Yitang, I underestimated you. Song Sui was so furious he laughed coldly, one syllable at a time. Under the scolding of the order police, he had no choice but to release my hand and grit out an apology to me. My mother dragged me into the car. Her face still carried lingering shock. Was that boy just now the lip-syncing singer from the bar the other day? I heard he was the top student in your grade. I lowered the car window and cast my gaze at Song Sui standing alone behind us, looking like a bereaved stray dog. I smiled and corrected my parents. He is not the top student anymore. The phone in my pocket vibrated. A message from an unknown number arrived. Do you think doing this can defeat me? Don't forget, the person qualified to stand on a stage and be cheered by 10,000 people will always be me. I sneered and directly threw that number into the blacklist. I turned and tugged on my parents' sleeves. Our new company can start operating now. The college entrance exam results were announced. I scored 730 points. So, although I was not outstanding enough to become the top scorer, it was still far higher than my score in the previous life. Applying to the media department of Capital University would not be stressful at all. The next time I saw Song Sui was at our high school graduation party. As soon as I walked in, several classmates gathered around me to congratulate me on my excellent results. Someone casually brought up the scores of several other top students in the class. Song Sui. Forget it, what top student? His college entrance exam score didn't even reach the lowest cutoff. What then is he planning to repeat the year? Seat. What, he's famous now. I heard he can make a few thousand yuan just by singing a few songs. Right, they call that an online idol. I see videos of him on my phone all day. While the classmates were gossiping noisily, Song Sui appeared. He wore a smart suit and had Jiang Yan, dressed in a low-cut spaghetti strap dress, on his arm. His gaze swept over me and paused slightly. So, well, our great top student is a big boss now. You're dressed very impressively. Song Sui led Jiang Yan over. Whether intentionally or not, he pulled out the chair right beside me and sat down in it. How unlucky. I immediately stood and moved to another seat. Song Sui's face stiffened. He forced himself to speak. I'm not some big boss. I just caught the right wind and made a little pocket money. Few classmates, with poor grades, immediately crowded around to flatter him. Great scholar. Which way is the wind blowing? Can you bring us along too? Song Sui put on a cold demeanor and lowered his eyes to adjust his cuff. Short video industry. If you're interested, when I have time, I'll introduce you to my boss. Hearing that, I could not hold back and burst out laughing. The hand Song Sui used to hold his wineglass tightened. He shot a sharp look at me. I tried to suppress my smile and waved my hand. It's fine. It's fine, keep bragging. The crowd soon changed the topic again, and teased him about how pretty his girlfriend was. Song Sui's expression softened a little. He considerately picked up food for Jiang Yan. The girl sitting beside me curled her lip, her expression full of contempt. Girlfriend, my foot. I heard from people at the vocational school that Jiang Yan still hasn't broken up with that boss Queen Hao. Song Sui is really pitiful. He's being led around by that woman like a spinning top. I only smiled faintly. People who choose to abase themselves are never worthy of sympathy. The air in the private room began to feel stuffy. I carried a glass of juice out onto the balcony to get some air. At some point, Song Sui followed and hovered behind me. His face showed an indescribable fatigue and weakness. Lin Yitang, do you really hate me that much? He stared straight into my eyes, as if wanting to dig out even the slightest lingering attachment. I remained calm and lifted my chin toward the space behind him. Your girlfriend is here. Song Sui had only just turned his head when a loud slap landed on his left cheek. Said, you were going to the bathroom, but you sneaked out here to flirt with another little vixen. Jiang Yan shrieked sharply. She threw the entire glass of red wine in her hand straight into Song Sui's face. You bastard. You still haven't forgotten this damned girl, have you? I knew it. With a vicious expression, Jiang Yan raised her long claws and charged at me. Seeing through her intention, I quickly stepped back and hid behind a server. Jiang Yan, have you caused enough trouble? Song Sui raised his hand and slowly wiped the messy red wine from his face. The other hand gripped Jiang Yan's wrist tightly. The sharp cruelty flashed in the bottom of his eyes. But when he caught my gaze watching the show with interest, he froze. Song Sui yanked Jiang Yan into his arms, blue veins bulging across the back of his hand. He stroked her back, forcing his voice into a gentleness so nauseating it made one sick. Jiang Yan, be good. Don't be angry with me anymore. Several classmates opened the balcony door and saw the whole scene. They hurriedly took out their phones to film and take photos, clicking their tongues and sighing. The great scholar of our class really is a foolish romantic. The end of August, I carried my luggage to Capital University to register. My tense, yet promising university life officially began. Occasionally, through old classmates, I learned about Song Sui's current situation. He had become a wildly famous local internet sensation. Every night, he sang at bars, and fans surrounded the place so tightly, not even a drop of water could get through. He was praised as a musical genius. In one step, he had risen into the clouds, his halo dazzling. Seeing that scene, I did feel a faint itch in my heart. But then September arrived, carrying the rich fragrance of osmanthus. Lin Wenjing finally sent me good news. The net has been laid. It's time to harvest this batch of fish. Overnight, a series of videos showing a vocational schoolgirl bullying classmates were pushed directly onto the hottest search trends across social media. Every victim's face in the videos was blurred. Only the perpetrator's face was clear before the camera. She used sharp, high heels to trample sensitive parts of the girls' bodies. She yanked their hair and pressed their heads into the toilet. She forced the victims to slap their own mouths and call themselves beasts. She made them eat dirty leftovers meant for stray dogs. There were 19 female victims in total, and a full 40 videos. These videos had all been secretly recorded by people around them. Lin Wenjing sighed softly. Her voice trembled violently, yet it carried a strength so resilient it was hard to believe. By myself, I am small. But there are thousands and tens of thousands of people out there who will help me stand up. Lin Yitang, the opportunity has come. We absolutely cannot let her have any chance to raise her head again. I silently closed my laptop. Don't worry. I have endured for far too long, while waiting for this day. This moment. The short video industry had not truly exploded yet, and competition was nowhere near as fierce as it would be a few years later. Although Song Sui knew internet media would become a money tree, he knew nothing about image building or cash flow operations. In the previous life, the person standing behind his success, quietly arranging everything, had always been me. All he needed to do was practice singing, hold a microphone, stand in front of the camera, and play the role of a devoted man. Then he could attract an enormous number of fans. He had never understood the hardship of the work behind the scenes. He did not know how many minds had to calculate, and how many people had to work together to push him onto that stage, adored by thousands. He had never been a genius. I was the one who shaped him into one. So, why, in this life, I had taken one step ahead. I founded a company early and built my own media empire. My network of influencers covered every battlefield. Very soon, Song Sui would have his eyes opened. Every media channel, under my company's umbrella, simultaneously shared those anti-school bullying videos. Public opinion would aim its sharpest spear straight at the heart of the girl he doted on so dearly. Song Sui loved Jiang Yan so deeply. How could he possibly stand by and not rescue her? But not long afterward, Lin Yitang brought me shocking news. Jiang Yan has gone insane. She was evaluated as having mental problems, and she has completely escaped criminal responsibility. It seemed we were not the only ones who had prepared in advance. When she received the news, Lin Yitang's voice sank with despair. Are we really out of ways to deal with her? How could that be? I told her to stay calm and wait. For the fire of public opinion to burn even more fiercely. Sure enough, on an online forum, a post suddenly became the center of the storm. The post named the rising online singer Song Sui as the boyfriend of that school bully. Thanks to Song Sui's habit of showing off his affection everywhere, Jiang Yan's shadow appeared all over his social media accounts. Old classmates were also extremely enthusiastic and kept jumping into the comments to expose more. They competed to post intimate photos of the couple, kissing in front of the school gate, embracing in the corridor, groping each other in dark alleys. Those acts that once showed off their grand love had now turned into burning coals stuck to Song Sui's hands. He could not throw them away even if he wanted to. All of Song Sui's social media accounts completely fell. Furious netizens cursed him as an accomplice, as trash who supported violence. The bar, where Song Sui performed, was surrounded by people demanding a boycott. His singing work was officially suspended. In truth, if Song Sui had been ruthless enough to immediately cut ties with Jiang Yan at that moment, public opinion might not have forced him into a dead end. But he was far too arrogant. For a long time, the name Song Sui was tightly bound to the word bullying. Some people even mocked that even at this point, he still had not abandoned Jiang Yan. Sure enough, this is true love moving heaven and earth. Song Sui really is a rare seed of devotion. But the people who said that were slapped in the face very soon. Someone quietly uploaded a video into the high school class group chat. The video, Jiang Yan's lower body was covered in blood as she was hurriedly pushed into the emergency room. Song Sui followed beside her with a tense expression. Just as they reached the emergency room doors, Jiang Yan suddenly struggled up. She grabbed Song Sui's collar tightly, her 10 fingernails digging into his skin, and screamed crazily, Song Sui, if this child is gone, I will never let you off. First, clear worry had been written on Song Sui's face. But the moment he heard those words, his eyes darkened. Slap. He struck Jiang Yan hard across the face, meeting her disbelieving gaze. Song Sui closed his eyes tightly, flames of anger surging in the depths of his eyes. Jiang Yan, stop making trouble here. The video ended, and the group chat exploded with shocked whispers. Didn't Song Sui used to worship Jiang Yan like a goddess and willingly become the other man just to be with her? How did things become like this? A passionate, youthful love eventually turns into enemies who can't coexist. In truth, the reason was extremely simple. For the old Song Sui, Jiang Yan had been a vivid flower blooming from the muddy swamp of his life. See, he could not obtain her, and he wanted to touch her, but could not. But the Song Sui of now was different. See, had one climbed to the peak of glory in his previous life, and tasted what it meant to be worshipped by thousands. See, had become used to the flattering gazes of others. Now he saw everything through the eyes of someone standing above. The flower from the mud was already in his palm, free for him to crush at will. She was someone who should only crawl under his feet. He could close one eye and indulge her once or twice. But he would absolutely never allow that woman to trample his pride. For a former idol, adored by thousands like Song Sui, that was an insult he could not swallow. All I needed to do was spend a little money and release a few intimate photos of Jiang Yan and Qin Hao. Just like that, Song Sui completely lost control. I heard Jiang Yan miscarried and was taken home by Song Sui, where he personally cared for her. The public storm over the school bullying incident also gradually sank into oblivion with time. So, I decided to give them a second grand gift. Song Sui received a lawyer's warning letter sent by me. The accusations were suspected music copyright theft and using another person's property to conduct business for profit. He was an extremely arrogant and hypocritical person. In my previous life, I had been the one who racked my brains to create the explosive album for him. Yet, he had dared to pat his chest and claim it was his original work. He sang those songs again and again during live streams, receiving endless applause and praise in return. But there was one thing he would never know. Back when he was still singing casually at bars, I had already quickly registered the copyrights for all those songs. The composer's name written proudly on the registrations was mine. The copyright registration information was publicly announced online by Song Sui's own management company. The company issued a firm statement. It absolutely would not tolerate plagiarism or intellectual property theft. The company decided to terminate its contract with Song Sui immediately. For brazen breach of contract, Song Sui faced an enormous compensation fee that fell from the sky. On top of that, he had to publicly apologize and compensate me for economic losses. From a pure and lofty internet sensation adored by countless fans, Song Sui instantly turned into a stinking sewer rat, cursed wherever he went. From the title of musical genius, he became a joke called the music thief. Many musicians online also began speaking up. They accused him, saying that their heartfelt drafts, which they had not yet released, had somehow been sung by Song Sui online. Even the lyrics matched word for word. Although they did not have solid evidence to convict Song Sui of plagiarism, no one could swallow that anger. So downstairs, from the building Song Sui rented, crowds of people gathered tightly. Every day, they held loudspeakers and aimed them at his windows, demanding that Song Sui come downstairs and give them an explanation. When I received Song Sui's call, I was not surprised at all. The company I signed with is under your name. You dug this trap long ago and waited for me to jump into it. His voice came through the speaker, gloomy and cold like a poisonous snake, carrying hatred deep into the bone. Lin Yitang, you really are despicable. I'm despicable. I could not hold back and laughed mockingly. You say, I dug a trap and waited for you to jump in. Then why did you dive into it headfirst without the slightest hesitation? See, he clearly had many other choices. So, many large entertainment companies had extended olive branches and wanted to sign him. In the end, Song Sui fixed his eyes on this newly founded media company. Why? Because only this company offered a profit-sharing deal, so sweet that 80% went to him. Even though the contract clearly stated that if he became involved in plagiarism disputes, he would have to pay an astronomical compensation sum. He was blinded by money and signed his name with his eyes shut. In the end, Song Sui and Jiang Yan really were the same kind. They could never escape the word greed. Their greed was bottomless. Once they had one thing, they wanted another. When their desires were not satisfied, they blamed heaven and earth and hated those who had once helped them. But they absolutely never looked in the mirror at their own filthy faces. Song Sui, take your time enjoying it. I bet that from now on, every single day you live will feel like being boiled in a furnace. The compensation amounted to tens of millions of yuan. Even if Song Sui sold his life and bankrupted himself, he could never gather enough. He carried his lyric drafts around, trying to sell them to record companies. In the end, he was kicked out mercilessly. No lunatic would risk spending money on the work of a thief. The creditors smelled blood and rushed to his door to demand payment. The door and walls of the Song family's home were splashed with chicken blood, covered in threatening debt collection words. The iron door was always locked tight, and filthy waste was thrown all around the entrance. Before anyone even got close, the stench rushed straight into the nose, enough to make them nauseous. A neighbor, in the same building secretly, took a photo of Song Sui's current appearance. His beard was overgrown, and he wore a hoodie pulled low over his head. He stared at the ground while carrying a garbage bag outside. His once pitch-black eyes were now empty and gloomy, like two bottomless black holes. Seeing him down and out, Jiang Yan naturally spread her wings and flew away. Rumor had it that she was once again lingering sweetly with Qin Hao, the boss of the vocational school. Didn't Song Sui fly into a rage? Several classmates in the group asked curiously. Someone, well-informed, immediately jumped in to explain. Rage. What could he do? He ran to find Jiang Yan, but Qin Hao called people over and beat him half to death. I heard that after he recovered, he still went crawling back and followed Jiang Yan around like a servant. C.S. Kesk. The great scholar of our class really is devoted, isn't he? Devoted. I picked up my phone and contacted Jiang Yan, preparing to send her the third grand gift. It was a life insurance policy, worth more than 8 million yuan, purchased for her by Song Sui himself. And the beneficiary, of course, was Song Sui. That very night, a terrifying fire broke out at Xingfu residential complex. When the authorities carried Jiang Yan's body out, her body had been badly burned. But what stood out most was the fatal wound on her neck. It was a cruel echo of the way I had died in my previous life. It was exactly like my miserable death in the previous life. Covered in wounds, Song Sui was handcuffed and escorted downstairs by the police. On the patches of exposed skin, obvious fresh scratch marks covered him. Camera flashes exploded non-stop. The curious crowd competed to capture the downfall of an internet idol who had now become someone who took another person's life. Along the way, Song Sui stayed silent. Only when he lifted his face and saw me standing among the crowd, did he raise his head slightly. His face was speckled with the fresh red blood that had splashed from Jiang Yan. He looked at me with an expression so calm it was frightening and whispered, "I did nothing wrong." Lin Yitang. The corner of his mouth lifted into a faint smile. You knew it too. Even without my slash, her fate could never have ended well. I also smiled at him. I pursed my lips and gently blew out a breath, as if blowing out an invisible candle before me. December was cold enough to pierce bone. The white mist from my mouth was quickly scattered by the winter wind. Song Sui. Yesterday was your 18th birthday. happy birthday. For intentional homicide, combined with arson. The punishments were added together. Because he had crossed the threshold of 18, Song Sui was sentenced to death. From behind the cold bars, he sent word that he wanted to see me one last time. I ignored it. Before the execution, he wrote me a letter. The prison guard said it could be forwarded to me. But I refused to accept it. As for Qin Hao, Jiang Yan's boyfriend, rumors said he was crippled from the waist down during a fight with a group of thugs. And the rest of his life was basically ruined. Because it happened in a deserted alley in the middle of the night, with no surveillance cameras, his family searched until their eyes turned red and still could not find the attackers. When I heard the news, I was sitting and waiting for Lin Wenjing to finish work at the Community Rehabilitation Center, preparing to go to dinner together. She rubbed her temples. From now on, Qin Hao will have to go to the physical therapy department of my hospital every month for regular checkups. We looked at each other and smiled meaningfully. Then we linked arms and walked to the spicy fish noodle shop across the road. Sometime later, another major incident happened at the poultry market. The vegetable seller secretly poured pesticide onto the neighboring fruit stall. After the crime was exposed, she was immediately thrown in jail for such a serious offense. Fortunately, everything was discovered in time, so no one died from poisoning. My parents looked at me hesitantly, wanting to speak but stopping themselves. The person who put in the poison was that Song Sui's mother. Some time ago, you asked Uncle Zhang to keep an eye on the market situation. So this matter, was it? I laughed softly and shook my head. Not everyone chooses to commit a crime just because you place a knife in their hand. What does Song Sui's mother bringing disaster onto herself have to do with me? Seeing me shake my head, my parents breathed a sigh of relief. My father patted my shoulder. Don't think too much, daughter. If anything happens in the future, don't keep it all bottled up in your heart. Remember that your parents are always here. That was right. I had a wonderful family, and people who loved me unconditionally. Just as I was preparing to say goodbye and return to school, I received an anonymous package. When I opened it, inside was a thin sheet of paper that looked as if it had been torn from a notebook. The handwriting was familiar and somewhat immature. The 7th of the month. Cloudy rain. Lately, I keep having a strange dream. In the dream, there is a girl named Lin Yitang. She is warm and radiant, like a ray of light tearing open the sky and illuminating my life. She healed that damp, dark life of mine. But the person in the dream was far too greedy. I used her again and hurt her countless times. As if it were the me of now, if such a wonderful girl truly appeared, I swear I would love and cherish her with my life. Even if I had to exchange my death for it. The 10th of the month. Sunny. Jiang Yan came to vent her anger on me again today. The moment she stepped on me and crushed me into the ground. I was so breathless, I almost died. I truly saw the girl from my dream. I screamed for help to her. But things were not like in the dream. She walked past coldly, not even throwing me one glance. My life or death seemed to have no meaning at all in her eyes. She really is called Lin Yitang, exactly the same name as in the dream. Clearly, in the dream, she treated me so well. Why? Why exactly? There were still several long sections below, but I could not be bothered to glance at them again. I crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it straight into the trash can. Trash belonged properly in the place for trash. Lin Wenjing had just arrived too. She had taken a few days off and planned to invite me to tour capital city. The red sun rose high, scattering golden rays over everything. Spring had truly arrived. Extra. Song Sui's final letter. Tang Tang. Perhaps this is the first time in this life that I have used this name to call you. It truly feels strange. Clearly. In the previous life, we were once so intimate. Why did we become irreconcilable enemies after being reborn? I once firmly believed that the person I loved with my whole life was Jiang Yan. She was the obsession I pursued, the longing I could not reach. So, even when I had you standing beside me in the previous life, deep in my heart, her shadow still haunted me. But when I was given a second chance at life, I finally realized with bitter shame what my true self was. From childhood, Jiang Yan and I grew up together. She was the little girl next door I always told myself I had to protect. Later, my mother committed that terrible sin and made Jiang Yan lose her father forever. From then on, whenever I faced her, aside from pity, all that remained inside me was endless guilt and torment. I gritted my teeth and endured her beatings, deceiving myself into believing that doing so could wash away some part of the sin my mother had caused. The years passed. Even I could no longer clearly distinguish what that feeling was. Was it love from youth, or was it merely compensation for old mistakes? It is truly ridiculous to say. But in the moment I approached death, my mind was filled entirely with you. Do you still remember the time you slipped and fell off the cliff? That time, in order to shield you with my own body, I almost had to lose both legs. When I heard the doctor announce that terrible news, I was in so much pain. But that pain did not come from my physical injuries. I hated myself. Why was my first instinct in that life and death moment to rush out and save you? That had already become my instinct. I was too foolish and too slow. Only now do I finally realize with bitterness. From the moment I threw myself off that cliff, I had already fallen in love with you. But you were right, Jiang Yan and I were always the same kind. We love ourselves more than anything else in the world. For ambition and personal desire, we were willing to push others toward death. I admit that I regret it now. If Jiang Yan had never existed in this world, could we have held hands in the previous life and lived a happy, complete life together? Sorry. Tang Tang. In this world, aside from you, I had only one family member left. I know you are kind and soft-hearted. I beg you, for the sake of our past, please show a little mercy and look after my old mother. In the previous life she never did anything wrong to you. Tomorrow, I will be taken to the execution ground. Said at this moment, a thin thread of hope is still flickering in my heart. If only I could be reborn one more time. This time, I definitely would not choose the wrong path again. Song Sui's final words.